witch hunts of the Middle Ages took place all over Europe and even in the United States of America. However, witch hunts in the Russian Imperial Empire were much more rare. To this very day, a huge number of Russian people are attributed with psychic power. In the 19th century, the Russian Romanov royal family employed a powerful hypnotist and mystic. He has become known as the Mad Monk Grigory Rasputin. The story of Rasputin exemplifies the psychopathic nature of the monarchy. Rasputin was a self-styled monk and therefore had friends in the Russian Orthodox Church. Rasputin had endured poverty, giving him the common touch with the peasant population of Russia. He was revered as someone who could heal, therefore bringing him notoriety across the vast empire of Imperial Russia. Rasputin was also someone who could entertain the company of royalty. Rasputin was seen as a threat by the Romanov royal dynasty. Grigory Rasputin may have actually become Russia's first truly popular leader had he not been poisoned and murdered by one of the royal princes. Born in 1869, the mystical Grigory Rasputin could engage himself in an intense trance where he prophesied future events. His psychic healing powers were employed by Tsar Nicholas and Queen Alexandra. Rasputin used his famous healing hands to cure the Tsar's son. Once the royal Romanov dynasty saw the immense power of Rasputin, they quickly realized that a popular revolt may elevate Rasputin to be the leader of a new Russian republic. The Romanov royal family immediately plotted the murder of Rasputin. However, Rasputin's psychic powers allowed him to prophesy his own death, and he gave warning to Tsar Nicholas that if he were to murder Rasputin, then the whole Romanov royal family would also be killed. On New Year's Eve 1916, Prince Felix Yusupov invited Rasputin to the Moika Palace in St. Petersburg. The prince gave Rasputin poisoned food. However, Rasputin showed no sign of dying. Prince Felix panicked and rushed out of the palace to consult Grand Duke Dmitri. The Duke and Prince returned with a gun and shot Rasputin at point-blank range. A palace doctor was called who could find no sign of life in the body of Rasputin. However, suddenly, Rasputin regained consciousness, and the prince and the duke ran for the outer gate of the palace and called for armed troops to finish off Rasputin. Rasputin chased the duke and prince. The crowned prince took a club and hit Rasputin repeatedly over the head in a typically psychopathic royal temper. Palace guards were ordered to wrap Rasputin in a heavy curtain, and he was then lowered to his death in the icy cold River Neva. Thus, the Russian people lost one of their truly great potential leaders. Soon after, a bloodbath would take place in Imperial Russia, and the dictatorial, cruel system of the Romanov monarchy would be continued by a fake revolutionary communist government who secretly took their orders from the royal political elite. Descendants of the Russian monarchy and aristocracy now rule Russia from behind the scenes, having introduced the same system of globalization and stock markets which the royal elite have used to ensnare the economies of most countries on the face of planet Earth. Perhaps the most cruel and bloodthirsty homicides ever perpetrated in Britain were the so-called Jack the Ripper murders, which occurred in East London during 1888. This was more than just murder. The so-called Jack the Ripper murders were ritual bloodbaths. The victims were slaughtered according to the oaths of loyalty sworn by members of the Masonic religion. Now, for the first time on film, we can reveal the truth about Jack the Ripper. Diaries written by Inspector Abberline of Scotland Yard at the time of the Ripper murders have been held in safekeeping by Joseph Sickert, whose father was an artist who gave art lessons to Prince Albert Victor, the heir to the throne of the British Empire in the 19th century. Prince Albert Victor was known as Prince Eddie. He was the son of Queen Alexandra and the grandson of Queen Victoria. During the last 120 years, royal spin doctors have led the public to believe that Queen Victoria was popular. She was not. Often hissed in public, Queen Victoria was a German, and so was her husband. They were great supporters and patrons of World International Freemasonry. Queen Victoria's son became King Edward VII. He was King of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, King of the Commonwealth Realms, and the Emperor of India. He was the first British monarch to carry the name of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha onto the throne. Edward VII was part of the Germanic royal dynasty which had sponsored the writing career of Adam Weishaupt, a Jesuit who had formed the Bavarian Illuminati in the 1770s. The Bavarian Illuminati infiltrated the upper echelons of Freemasonry, preaching a secret doctrine of a new world order, a global superstate where compassion and democracy would have no place. Since the 1700s, the Bavarian Illuminati has fragmented into an invisible global network of secret societies, which includes the infamous Skull and Bones fraternity at Yale University in the United States. Adam Weishaupt's doctrine of a new world order was laid out in 3 books which he wrote in the later years of his life. He lived in the town of Gotha, and his writing career was funded by the Saxe-Coburg dynasty, who came to the British throne through Edward VII. Edward VII was installed as Grand Master of British Freemasonry in 1875. He regularly appeared in public wearing the ceremonial uniform of a Masonic Grand Master. Like his Saxe-Coburg grandparents, King Edward VII was one of the biggest financial contributors to the Illuminati version of Freemasonry. He was crowned in 1901. Masonic lodges existed in several royal palaces, most notably in Kensington Palace, which was home to the Royal Alpha Lodge. It was here, in 1885, that King Edward VII initiated his own son, Prince Albert Victor, better known as Prince Eddie. Prince Eddie was genetically handicapped. Generation after generation of inbreeding within the Saxe-Coburg bloodline had resulted in Prince Eddie, the heir to the throne, being partially deaf. With typical cruelty, most of the royal family had no time for a partially deaf person, and Eddie's brother was groomed instead to take the throne after Edward VII died. Along with the great and the good of Victorian and Edwardian society, Prince Eddie spent much of his time enjoying himself at the taxpayers' expense in various brothels. Prince Eddie was a regular visitor of a homosexual paedophile brothel in Cleveland Street, London. Aleister Crowley, who claims to have been a member of the 1591 Studholme Masonic Lodge and also a visitor to the Royal Alpha Lodge at Kensington Palace, was in possession of love letters between Prince Eddie and a young boy at the brothel. This was a potential scandal for the heir to the throne, but the aristocracy supported the idea of paedophilia at the time. In fact, there was a revolt in the House of Lords when the age of consent was raised from 12 to 13 years of age. In fact, a much bigger scandal was soon to break, when it was revealed that Prince Eddie had made a young girl called Annie Crook pregnant. Prince Eddie had secretly married her, even though he was forbidden to marry a Roman Catholic. Officially, this meant that he would not be able to become king. In 1884, the Pope had condemned the satanic nature of Freemasonry, and the royal political elite split into 2 factions, one Catholic and anti-Masonic, and the other Protestant, fiercely guarding the real power behind the throne, which was World International Freemasonry. Prince Eddie had secretly married a Catholic, and that was a form of treason. It infuriated powerful Freemasons. Mixed with a potent dash of royal paedophilia and Aleister Crowley's collection of homosexual love letters between the prince and a young boy, the British establishment was facing perhaps the biggest scandal ever to have rocked the monarchy. They decided to do what the monarchy has always done: stage a massive cover-up operation. In 1885, Annie Crook was kidnapped from the sweet shop where she worked, and simultaneously Prince Eddie was forced into a carriage which galloped away in the opposite direction. It was the last the young newlywed couple ever saw of each other. Prince Eddie was taken back to Buckingham Palace and strictly forbidden to leave the premises. Annie Crook was illegally incarcerated at Guy's Hospital, where one of Queen Victoria's doctors, the wicked Sir William Gull, picked some of her brain out with tweezers, turning her into a mentally retarded, pathetic shadow of her former self. However, Annie Crook had told several friends about her marriage to the young prince. Annie had just given birth to a baby, a bastard heir to the British throne. Dr. William Gull kept Annie Crook imprisoned for 156 days in Guy's Hospital, and then sent her and her baby to workhouses where they were used as slave labour. One of Annie's friends, a young girl called Mary Kelly, worked part-time as a prostitute at Whitechapel in East London. Mary Kelly and a group of her friends decided to write a blackmail letter demanding money from the royal family. The year was 1888. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn had been formed the same year. Freemasons marched in full ceremonial regalia in public. The Bavarian Illuminati had splintered into a secret society inside another secret society. All the thrones of Europe were occupied by royal Masons. What Mary Kelly and her group of friends had not counted on is that not only were they trying to blackmail royal Masons, they were blackmailing psychopathic crowned killers who would prefer to kill rather than give over a single penny of their wealth. The occult powers behind the throne convened a special meeting at the Royal Alpha Lodge in Kensington Palace. This elite group of Masons called themselves Princes of the Blood Royal. And they decided to form a ruthless hunting party which would hunt down and ritually murder Mary Kelly and her friends, thus putting an end to the blackmail attempt. Sir Charles Warren, a senior Freemason and head of the Metropolitan Police, provided intelligence on the whereabouts of Mary Kelly and her female friends. Sir William Gull prepared grapes injected with opium and alcohol, which would be offered to the girls. John Netley, a ruffian coach driver who worked for several aristocrats, would supply transportation. And J.K. Stephen, a socialite of Victorian London, would act as a lookout whilst the ritualized murders would take place inside Netley's horse-drawn carriage. According to the diaries of Inspector Aberline of Scotland Yard, diaries which were sealed in wax and held in safekeeping by the Victorian Impressionist painter and friend of Prince Eddie, William Sickert, the so-called Jack the Ripper murders were not the work of one crazy individual. These were meticulously planned ritual murders conducted in the Masonic tradition by a large group of aristocrats who hunted the young female victims rather like a country expedition killing foxes. So who was the leader of the Jack the Ripper gang? None other than one of Britain and Ireland's most senior Freemasons, the son of a duke, member of Her Majesty's Privy Council, an Oxford graduate, a Justice of the Peace, Secretary of State for India, Member of Parliament for South Paddington in London, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Leader of the House of Commons in the British Parliament, friend of King Edward VII, and Mason Magister Majestic Magistorium of the Orange Order in Ireland, future father of Britain's most famous Prime Minister. The leader of the Jack the Ripper gang was Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill. It was Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill who sliced Masonic emblems into the faces of the victims. It was he who coordinated the so-called Jack the Ripper murders. And this film puts an end to a 120-year cover-up by the royal political elite of Great Britain. Until the young Lady Diana Spencer became Princess of Wales, Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill was the most famous member in the history of the Spencer aristocratic family. Her Royal Highness Princess Diana was herself a Spencer, a family which has served the monarchy for generations. She is distantly related to Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill, Jack the Ripper, and his son, Winston Churchill. Randolph Spencer Churchill was no stranger to the occult. He ripped and slashed the victims, slicing Masonic symbols into their faces. According to Masonic instruction, the internal organs of the victims were torn out and trailed over their left shoulder. For these murders were ritual sacrifices, a public warning to anyone who was considering to commit treason. his characteristic manner, Aleister Crowley soon left Britain after the Jack the Ripper murders. The love letters between Prince Eddie and the young boy prostitute never surfaced in the public domain. J.K. Stephen, one of the aristocratic gang of murderers, was so ashamed and shocked by the ritual psychopathic behaviour of Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill that he made his confession to Inspector Abberline at Scotland Yard. Of course, there were no arrests. In fact, Scotland Yard still, to this day, take great care to cover up the true significance and detail of the Jack the Ripper Masonic murders. When author Stephen Knight was given access to the Ripper file at Scotland Yard, he found that many important documents had been deliberately lost. Stephen Knight discovered later that some of the documents he had seen during his research for his book, Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution, had subsequently been destroyed. Soon after the publication of Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution, and also after having exposed the true nature of demonic Freemasonry in his excellent book called The Brotherhood, Stephen Knight was dead.
Now, what Diana says, again in her own words, is that she was told when the birth of William was coming along that she was going to be induced so that the child would be born, wait for this, in line with Charles's polo playing program. Now, first of all, even if that was true, which it wasn't, what does that say about a father that would have an induced child so it would suit his polo playing program? But what was the real story? If you go back to ancient Babylon and the rituals of these people, they're fundamentally connected to the sun and the cycles of the sun. Nimrod, Baal, the sun god. And one of the key days of the year in their ritual calendar, therefore, is the summer solstice. They induced William to be born when? The summer solstice. And this is what's going on around us all the time. There's a movie, which that television is telling us is reality. And then there's what's really going on, which is so different. It's its greatest form of defense. The chasm that people have to leap between what they are told is happening and what's really happening. A confidant, Christian Fitzgerald, told me that people who did not support these black occult networks that controlling not just Britain but increasingly the world, they were feeding her information and warning her that she was in danger. What keeps this whole thing from coming out, and has done for us all this time, and indeed the wider conspiracy too, is that to understand it you have to research so many different subjects and then fit the strands together before you go, wow, so that's what it's all about. In this soundbite world of superficiality we call the mainstream media, people get so little information that they can't see what's going on. So when you look at the story of Diana, it's not just about what's happening now, what happened in 97. It's also going back again to Babylon, places like that. The goddess Diana was an ancient goddess, which was another name for the Babylonian goddess Queen Semiramis, the goddess of the Illuminati. And one of the groups of people that worshipped Diana, the goddess, and did their rituals to her were called the Merovingians. The Merovingians are one of the, if not the, key bloodline in the whole Illuminati network. They were the royal line of a people called at one stage the Cambrian Franks, which is where we get France from, that came out of the time of the Trojan Wars in now what we now call Turkey, up through the Caucasus Mountains and into what we now call France. Eventually, their royal strand, the Merovingians, were what the whole people became known as. And they were great goddess Diana worshippers. And according to an American researcher in Paris, immediately after Diana died, the Merovingians dug underground sacrificial chambers in Paris, just outside the original Paris, well inside, of course, the present metropolis, where they did their rituals to the goddess Diana. And according to her, the place is now called the Pont d'Alma Tunnel, which is still an underground kind of location. Now, the ancient myths of the goddess Diana were that she was a moon goddess. Pont d'Alma actually translates as passage or bridge of the moon goddess. Coincidence? Why is it with the absolutely, I cannot emphasize this enough, the ritual symbolism obsessed Illuminati, why is it that even people who said, oh, it was an accident, have actually said, well, there is one question. Why was Diana held in that tunnel for so long when she's supposed to have had internal bleeding which needed repairing? Why not get her to hospital immediately? Why was she held in that tunnel for the best part of an hour and a half? Why? Because in the sick ritual, and that's what it was, the ritual of her murder, she had to die in that place of ancient sacrifice to the goddess Diana. And it was when she died that they then moved her out. And of course, goodness knows what have happened to her internal organs, because this is what these sick people use in their rituals. Interestingly, when you look at the stories and myths surrounding the goddess Diana, over and over again, the theme of lakes, of islands, and particularly of the tree grove come up again and again and again. It was the tree grove that was the sacred place of worship to the goddess Diana, not a temple. Now, she wanted to be interned in the little church where her father is, just off the Spencer estate in Northamptonshire. And after her death, Earl Spencer says that he decided that she would be buried on the Spencer estate. Where? On an island, in a lake, in a tree grove. And there's also this bizarre story where Earl Spencer says that he had this dream that he had to put 4 black swans on the lake. And he then said to his estate manager, I've had this dream. Do you know where we can get 4 black swans from? And the estate manager said, well, sir, funnily enough, someone's just offered us 4. Oh, yeah, okay. I've seen a pig. Never mind a bloody swan. There it goes.
Black swans are an occult symbol, aren't they?
Exactly. The whole thing's a cult. And the whole of Diana's assassination was an occult ritual unfolding. Now, what's kind of interesting to me is that when I was researching The Biggest Secret, which I wrote in 1998, which is kind of unfolding now before our eyes, one of the people that I was introduced to was a lady called Christine Fitzgerald, who, as the tabloid media in Britain acknowledged, was a close confidant of Princess Diana for 9 years. They fell out a little while before her death, but for 9 years they were big time close. And Christine Fitzgerald is a hands-on alternative healer and into the esoteric, and therefore Diana could talk to her about things that other people would think, you know, oh, that Diana's mad, she's talking about this, that, and the other now. And I had long conversations with Christine Fitzgerald about the background to Diana and things that she experienced with her. And I had to have a wry smile to myself when the Paul Burrell revelations came out, because much of it was told to me years ago and is in The Biggest Secret. Not least that friendly people from organizations like MI5 were actually feeding Diana information, saying, you know, be very, very careful because they want rid of you. And so when Burrell produced this letter from Diana in which she predicted her own death in a car crash, in effect, it absolutely fits with what Christine Fitzgerald told me about her experience and what Diana said to her.